Again, I implore you to remember, f your puts, f your calls. Jay Powell has you by the balls. God bless my money printer.
What is going on YouTube? It's Brendan from Market Makers. Are we chopping sideways, making tops to break down, or are we chopping sideways, making accumulation zones to break out? What are the catalysts? Let's talk about that for a second. We have Powell coming out on Wednesday. That's the FOMC meeting. So Powell, I don't expect him to do any type of surprise rate hike, but I would expect him to be more hawkish because he basically botched the last time he spoke. Markets went up. Markets, everybody on TV's talking about Fed rate cuts, pulling them forward, some as early as March of next year, which is only 3 months away. So if Powell wants to get his arms back around this conversation, I think he has to be pretty hawkish and put his foot down and say, no rate cuts. It's too early to say. Just keep reiterating the same thing over and over. And that might put a damper on this rally. But if Powell just tries to be balanced, and for him, being balanced is being dovish, we could see this thing break out. So we need to look at these resistance zones we're at now. And guys, I added energy to the end of this. I also brought back Mara and Riot because I want to show you how beautifully they're tracking to the fibs since I showed them to you last time. Guys, on Sunday night or Monday, Lee and I are going to release our first Market Makers special report. It's going to be a massive Black Rhino update. So if you guys like the video, definitely like it, comment. You can forward it to your friends. It's one of those videos you can share with people. It's not going to be TA. We're going to do a Market Maker style update, full update on the economic situation and the incoming recession. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it and find it very informative. But if you like it, tell me, because if you do, we can make more videos like that. Not all our videos have to be TA. But guys, today we're going to focus on the charts, going to try to cover everything, including energy. I added oil and nat gas to the end of this video as well. You can check the bottom for the timestamps. Lee has the timestamps there if you want to zip around to your favorite assets. And guys, without further ado, Lee, let's get this show on the road. I got things to do. All right, my friends, let's go ahead and start with the 10-year. Because lots of people are asking me for a 10-year update. Lots of people ask me for a DXY update. So we're going to start with these assets, work our way into the equities, into Bitcoin. And this is going to be an information-packed video. Guys, please do take a second, like and subscribe if you have not already done so. Really would appreciate your support. And let's go ahead and kick this off. All right, so the 10-year. We had our Wyckoff accumulation range. We broke out of the range, and you can see this is where we should have made our pivot, right? Holding here, holding at 4.323, coming back up. And of course, you'd want to see the pattern, something to break out, break this fractal, move out to the upside like everybody on TV, the smart people supposedly, we're all predicting because of all the supply coming on the market, right? And what's happening? Yields are dropping because the economy is getting weaker. So could we have predicted where this top was? Well, of course you could. If you understand the appropriate way to lay out fibs, look at your 1618. 5.004%, 1618, perfect hit. Look where you're at right now, just on a reverse move down here on your fibs. You're at the 786 at 4.1. Guys, if this starts falling below here, let's go ahead and just pull a retracement fib here to get a support level. If this starts falling down, let's go to the low in this zone, up to the high. You're below the 486 fib. The next stop is a 618, and that is a sub 4%, 3.928. I think the smart people in the money space, the professional money space, are going to realize if you start getting down to this level, very dangerous, especially if the DXY starts moving up as yields are dropping. This is a key recession indicator, and there's trillions and trillions of dollars right now sitting in cash and cash alternatives that is not invested in the market. So this is something to watch. We'll see if you can hold here, pull back up, maybe make a lower high, or if you're going to continue to decline. Remember, we got the federal jobs numbers coming out this week, the government jobs numbers, I should say, and we'll see what unemployment's doing. It was previously 3.9%, and they think it's going to be the exact same again, but I think it can move the market. So let's see what happens on Friday. Let's go and look at the DXY. DXY, let's look at our key retracement areas here on the DXY on this run up. You can see we bounced right off this 618, 102 spot 546, and now we're just pulling back down again. So we're going to see if this makes a W, right? So we want to see if we get a W out of this. Here's your pullback. If this can hold and come back up, remember back up here, this is when the S&P and all the indices made their key retracements back when the dollar was at 107. But this is something to watch because, again, if the dollar starts getting strength and moving to the upside as yields drop, it is yet another indicator of impending recession. Okay. So can we move up from here? It's too early to tell. We have to see what happens. Everything's going really slow. Obviously, with Powell coming on Wednesday, the markets in a lot of ways are just chopping and on pause. Let's look at our Bitcoin, guys. Bitcoin. So we now have achieved, we got past my 41,186 target, and we now have achieved a 40% move off the long of the fractal break I shared with you on October 23rd. I saw some disbelievers in the last video in the comments. Guys, go back and watch the video from October 23rd. You'll see the pattern and how to trade it. So we have this key area here now. Nice breakout from the diamond. Let's look at this on a clean chart. Let me show you how you can track this with your fib, okay? So we had our diamond pattern breakout. We got past the 2618 on a 3-day chart here, guys. So we can take our fib retracement. We're on a BingX chart. You can check here. You can click here at this peak here at 31,840, that fractal high, can pull it down to that low, okay? That next low there on August 17th, and this is going to vary by price, $50, $100, whatever, depending what exchange you're using. But you can see we once again hit the 2618 beautifully, 44,190. Right? So that's where Bitcoin is right now. Obviously, we've talked about this already, but if you pull a fib from the all-time high down to your market low from that, so from your 69K all the way down to your 15.5, 15,484. The 618 is 48,562. And you can see you're above the 486 fib, below the 618. So what could this mean? This means you could come back and back test 41.5. This means you could still continue to move up in a parabolic fashion, get to 48. But right now you're stuck in this fib retracement level at 44,190. If the markets are topping, I think this is going to be an area to look for Bitcoin to top. Let's go to the daily and see what we have here. If the markets are not topping, then Bitcoin's going to continue to rise. So we're going to look at the markets as well. But the daily, as you can see, we hit the target. We've had 2 candles down now. Let's look at this on the 4 hours, see if we're making any type of pattern. It's too early to tell still, guys. Even on a 4 hour, you have a little bit of a baby 3-wave pattern here, a baby double top. You see this? So this is a key area to watch, 44,190. I doubt anybody else on YouTube is going to have that specific number because they're not trading with fibs the way that I'm trading with fibs. But 44,190 is a key area. And just beneath you, 41.5 is the area you want to hold for support. And again, if you want to build some type of bullish pattern, you need to come out on top of this range, just like you've done before, and at some level pivot out. That pivot out could end up being a W pattern, just like this, taking this out, breaking your fractal, moving up higher. But that's what you want to do. And if you don't, if the markets end up topping, if Powell is super hawkish or scares the markets, if the unemployment jumps up higher than expected on Friday, all these external catalysts, you want to watch the external markets, right? The equity markets to see what can happen, because if they sell off, then you want to look and see if this range here is going to be a good range for Bitcoin as far as being a good resistance range to potentially take a short after this 40% up move. Let's look at this on the daily and look at our indicators. Looking at our MFI, we're not overbought, but we are turning down a little bit, still in bullish territory. So, on the daily, this is just the beginning of a 3-wave, right? So you have your impulse up, you have your move down, and now you want to see this come back up, right? And this is how you can start either going sideways, making lower highs, higher lows, whatever the case may be, and start making an accumulation range. Or this can be a quick exit if you did something like this on the daily, right? So this is just something, again, it's early. We only have 3 candles here on the daily. So nothing to write home about just yet, but watch this area. And of course, if you're trading on smaller time frames, you can probably find some interesting trades in the 1 hour and whatnot. And speaking of which, guys, if you want to check out our sponsors, check out BingX to trade all the cryptos. Link is in the video description. Or SimpleFX to trade all the equities, Bitcoin, commodities, Forex. Both are great exchanges. Both are great options. I'll pin the contact information for Lee on our Telegram and the YouTube comments. They both will pay for a free month for you to join our Discord, get all of our TA, live streams, trading ideas, and a fantastic community. You can message Lee to get more details. So let's move forward. Looking at the S&P, we're at 4584. Is this a topping pattern? Well, again, to me, since Thanksgiving week, November 22nd, you're just going sideways, right? And you've done this before. You've done this before where you're either going to top and drop or, make some type of bullish pattern and break out, but you're just chopping sideways. I know it's extremely boring, but you're just chopping sideways. So we'll see what happens. And the Fed meeting's on Wednesday, December 13th. And of course, the next lunar cycle here for the new moon is December 12th. So going to be interesting again, just like this full moon, new moon, full moon. This will be a new moon. Is this going to give us a pivot like this new moon did to the upside and like this full moon did to the exact candle to the upside? Or is the Poet's crash cycle going to come into effect and we're going to see the market begin to break down next week with perhaps an unexpectedly hawkish Powell? And obviously, if he did something and really surprised the market, like raise rates, you would see a strong retracement, in my opinion. But we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. Can't control what Powell says or does. Let's look at the S&P here on our larger chart. Let's get rid of these retracements. So again, our fractal high is 4601. Looking at this from this perspective of our W pattern, right? We have our W pattern. We've been going over this for weeks. And we have the target 4584. You're at 4586 right now. You've been as low in this range here as 4536 and as high as 4601. So you're basically trading in a $70 range, up and down, up and down. A lot of the guys in the Discord are taking smaller time frame trades, capturing these $20, $30 moves, $40 moves. But this is all you're doing right now, guys, is just chopping. So it's kind of boring, but you still have your bearish divergence as well here on the MFI, your wave divergence, your momentum's dying off back to the median line. You're on an up day today. You've had a couple of down days in a row, and today's an up day. So you got your up candle. We'll see how much longer this will last. And again, I just feel like the market's sitting here waiting for a catalyst. A lot of this has been priced in the market, but the market wants to see some type of catalyst. I still like this area for shorting. I would use my typical stop loss is a 2 ATR stop loss on a swing trade, for those of you familiar with average true range. So I like this area of 4584, obviously up to your high of 4601. But a lot of that's going to depend what happens with Powell, right? It's going to depend what happens with Powell, what happens with the unemployment, and what happens with the job numbers on Friday. So lots of events here happening between tomorrow and Wednesday of next week. So, again, just be aware of this. I want to share these levels with you. We've been over them many times. I still like this area here in shorts, okay? So that's what I'm looking at on the S&P. The NASDAQ is actually a little bit more interesting to me. So the NASDAQ, as you guys know, first of all, beautiful retracement right to the 618 after this massive sell-off, 34+% sell-off. This is a nice retracement, the big bounce back up. I want to show you a couple things here on the 3-day chart on the NASDAQ. If we look at the NASDAQ, first of all, I point these out. At some point, you guys are only going to see W patterns and M's, right? But you have your massive W pattern, okay? Your Ponzi pattern in the market. Let's go to that peak. Let's go to that low there, that market low, and look at your 1618, right? So your 1618 perfectly gave you 15,759 and then perfectly helped you capture this. Now we shorted the S&P in the room at 45.92, which was within, I think, $8 of the high on the rally up. And then you had this 11% drop in the S&P down to 4,100. And you had a 78% drop on this correction. Again, understanding how to lay out your fibs can give you prediction targets, right? Very important. Lots of people say, don't predict the market, just react to the market or always be invested in the market. Remember, because other people can't do it doesn't mean you can't do it. If you understand Fibonacci and advanced Fibonacci patterns, you can find high probability trades. And so this was a perfect hit on the 1618 harmonic expansion. Because what is Fibonacci after all, guys? It is nothing more than measurements of proportion. And the market moves in proportionality. And you have Fibonacci all throughout the universe. So why wouldn't it be in the market? And this is why you can find so many great trades with it. Now, something I want to draw your attention to before we zoom in is you're on top of the 1618 here. So you had your nice 11%, 12% drop, and now you had your rally up and you're on top of this, right? Very similar, one could say, to a Wyckoff range, right? So you have this Wyckoff range essentially. You could throw this right on the 1618. That's your, you could say it's your buying climax, your reaction candle down here. You have your lower high, down thrust. You broke down and then shot up with your spring, right? And now you're on top of the range. So what are we looking for when we're on top of the range? We're always looking for the Livermore pivot. You get on top of the Wyckoff range and you do this. And this usually comes out one of a couple of ways. It comes out in a double top fashion, oftentimes with a lower high on that second top, or you get your Livermore pivot when price comes up, pulls back and does this, takes out that fractal, and that's your journey back up to challenge the all-time high, okay? Those are the steps that you would need, which is why we're going to zoom in and look at this. Let's go ahead and delete this fib. Let's delete this. Well, I'll leave that little range on here. So let's zoom in here, and then we're going to go to the daily and look at the NASDAQ, because the NASDAQ's adhering beautifully to the fibs, right? So on the actual correction here on the 3-day chart, guys, once again, you have your W, right? We've been over this many, many times, got targets off of this, and this played out and tracked absolutely gorgeous. Again, did not break the 1618. 16,144. Look at that. See your fractal hit 16,144, and you got to 16,166, right? You got within $20 on a $16,000 asset, and you had a nice retracement from 16,144 all the way down to the fib I told you to watch, 15.7. So on the 3-day chart, you're just stacking candles side by side, but the Fibonacci is playing out gorgeous. Let's go to the daily chart, see what this looks like. And what this looks like, especially as you go down in time frames, we have our Wyckoff range. You're on top of the Wyckoff range. And again, you're either going to make your pivot and continue this, right? You're either going to continue this, come up and break out, or you're going to roll over. So you have your 3-wave move. You have your move up, move down to 15.7, and now you're back on the move up. So the move up, move down, you're either going to make your double top or you're going to make your pivot and come out and challenge the all-time high. There's really only 2 ways that this is going to go. You can continue to chop sideways, of course, but at some point you're going to make a pattern, right? Whether it's consecutive lower highs, consecutive higher lows, something to give you a sense of direction. But as of right now, you have your impulse up, you have your sell off to 15.7, and you're rebounding. So let's look at this with a fib pull down here to see where you're rebounding to on a fib retracement. And we can do that right here. Pull a fib retracement from your rally high down to your low. And you're between the 618 and the 786. So 1664 for the 786 fib for the NASDAQ, and you got just above 16K essentially for the 618. And so you can see this is where it's been struggling. Look at all the supply wicks here on the candles. So we'll see if this holds up and if you end up rolling over. But if you end up rolling over, you're going to re-enter your Wyckoff range. And again, I think this is going to happen with the external catalyst, whether it be unemployment on tomorrow, jobs numbers, or Powell on Wednesday. Powell's probably the best bet for a longer term move, right? So this is a key inflection point in the NASDAQ. If it can break this fractal high of 16,166, if it can break that fractal high, it looks like you're going to come up and challenge your all-time high. If you struggle here and start breaking down, you're making this double top. So if I was looking to trade this, obviously, your key entry point would have been at the 1618 at 16,144, but I would look at this from a retracement perspective here on a double top as well. 786 at 1664, which you're not there yet. So 1664 or slightly higher. See if you can hold this double top structure. If you do believe the data the data is going to be negative for the markets, and or Powell's going to be hawkish, right? I would use those two preliminaries because we don't know. I don't know what the data is going to be. Nobody knows. And I don't know what Powell's going to say or do. Nobody knows. So waiting is always another option because you'll have some further clarity of what the market's going to do, especially if this starts breaking out again or breaking down, right? This starts breaking out or breaking down, testing the neckline, breaking the neckline. You're going to know what's happening in the market based on these 2 key events. But as of right now, I like this area that it's at above 16K, below 16,144. This is a good area if you wish to take a wager. Looking at gold. Been over this a couple of times in depth now, but we're zoomed out on the 3-day chart. 2075, 2075, 2075. I know these are a few dollars short, guys, just making a point. 2075 and then broke out to 2150, then sold off. Not bullish on gold. I still get comments about it. Why aren't you bullish on gold? Because you've done this exact same move 3 times since 2020, right? It's a big fear trade. I say this, I own lots of physical metals. And normally, if you look at this big sell off, right? Here's the only time you got a pattern that you could have traded, which is a double top, but big sell off. And then again, we got close to it again. This is our short 2055. I traded this in the room, 250 bar drop down to 1800. And now you just did it again. And had you been paying attention or up late at night when this futures market was open Sunday night and you got that spike, you would have had a 130 point win in a matter of hours on a short, because that's what the market did when it came into the morning hours. It went down $130. I mean, absolutely crazy. So for gold, just like everything else in any type of Wyckoff structure, you had your pivot point up here. It needed to come back and hold 2075. It needed to come back. It can accumulate, do whatever it wants, make a W pattern. Break this fractal is the whole key. Break that fractal at 2150 for more upside in gold. Until it does that, I'm looking at this to potentially struggle and maybe give us another double top structure, okay? A 3-wave pattern, just like this sloppy one, which is more like a cipher. But something like this is what I'm looking at in gold. And again, it's way too early. It's not really moving. It's been stuck in this 2030 range ever since it had that parabolic spike. Let's look at this on the daily really quick. See if there's anything here. Well, we had, let me see here. I'm going to grab a fib, measure this, pull this down. I mean, look at that. See, probably wondering what I'm doing. That's a 2618 up here at 2135. And what I was looking at again was basically this disjointed W, right? So depending where you wanted to draw this from, it doesn't matter. It's just an example. But I was looking at this pattern, okay? It's looking at this disjointed W, and you got that expansion with that incredible parabolic pulse up there at 2135, and it got to 2150. Now, most people wouldn't have been looking at something like that, including me. But that's what it did. So right now on the daily, guys, it's just struggling to hold this range. It looks like 2009 is a key support area, and you have this big parabolic top. Be nice to see another impulse to try to retest 2075. That would be great to see how it handles that, right? We don't know. We don't know. What I do know is gold sells off when the markets sell off, and gold is at an all-time high, or it made an all-time high. It's not at an all-time high right now, but it made a new all-time high. Lots of markets or lots of individual equities are doing that as well. So watch gold, watch those levels. Nothing to see really. Still needs more time to develop into something interesting. Let's look at the US 30, the baby S&P. This is the Dow. We had our move up, and again, we just have, I mean, it's doing the same thing. So we have supply and demand wicks on these candles here on the daily time frame, but all you've done so far is this move. Maybe you get this move for the 3-wave pattern and get this type of move, but this is going to follow in confluence with what the S&P and the NASDAQ are doing. I don't have anything interesting here. You got above the 1618, nice parabolic fashion. The 2236 is at 36,442. You're between fibs. So there's just not a lot to see here on the Dow. I know a couple of you trade this, so I'll do you a solid, and let's go into like the 4-hour and look and see what we have here. If we have anything here worth looking at. I mean, it's just a really sloppy candles right now, but let's look at this. We got a mini cough structure here. We can throw this on here. Here's your reaction. And so you have this range. So this would be your next steps, okay? As of right now, this is bearish in nature. These candles are still open. If you're buying climax, you have your reaction candles, you have your top, your base, and then you have a retest here. You get an up thrust in range, sign of weakness, and now you have a down thrust. And depending how this closes, this could end up just being a lower high, right? So you want to watch this range. But when you're in these mini cough ranges or Wyckoff structures, Darvis structures, however you want to look at it, the format's the same. You got to get above the zone. Usually you get a pullback. That's how you get your pivot, right? Or you get your double top. So I'm going to keep showing you this because it's important to understand that. It's the same with this. If this sold back off, came back tested. This would be your pivot to the downside, breaking that fractal right here, breaking this fractal to the upside. And then obviously this is a double top, which would be tradable on that second top as well. So the steps are the same, and there's just nothing here yet. You're on a 4-hour time frame in between key fibs. Let's pull this and just see what we have here. The 618's at 36,171, 786 at 36,227. They're your immediate resistance levels. So that's what you want to watch. Immediate support level down here at 36K, right? But right now you're in a current bearish pattern trading inside a mini cough structure on the Dow. Let's move forward. The DAX stopped me out of my trade. Happens. The DAX made a new all-time high, the third all-time high it's made in this cycle. Absolutely incredible. But it made a new all-time high. You had your first all-time high, second all-time high. This is back in June 2023. Second all-time high. Now you have your third all-time high. So the DAX is doing this on the hopes of ECB rate cuts. At least that's what they tell you on the media, and I believe it because that's what most retail watches is the money managers on TV. You're at 16,656, got well above the 16,180, 16,250, where I was in this trade, 16,250. But this came up, stopped me out at the all-time high. So I'm out of this trade. Again, between key fibs, I don't have anything here, guys. Price discovery, but you're beginning to make a range just like you are on the Dow, okay? You're beginning to make a range. So if you go down to the 4-hour on the DAX, I mean, you already see you have a three-wave pattern here that formed, right? And again, it's a baby pattern. It's a 4-hour time frame. So you have to move up, move down, and you have this retracement. And if you want to pull fibs on this to see what this is doing, if the markets do end up making some type of top for a retracement, then you're looking at the 618 at 16.6, the 46 fib at 16,663, and the 786 at 16.7. Basically, what that would be implying is you have this move here, do something like that. Okay, so this would be your three-wave structure like that. Of course, you could just be making this range and doing what the S&P and the NASDAQ are doing, which is something like this. So just be well aware of that. That's what's happening in the DAX. Let's look at the indicators really quickly. Pretty much, I mean, you're not overbought. You're in an extremely bullish trend, obviously, right? You're in an extremely bullish trend on the DAX. You did hit overbought, but you're still just extremely bullish. You got a sell signal of wave divergence, but you could be making a range. It's very, very early to tell, right? It's very early to tell. Unless you get some type of move like this, previous all-time high, and you just start dropping. I mean, this is, you could be making a little range here on the 4-hour, 8-hour, and then hopefully the daily, so you can start seeing some larger patterns present themselves. But not a lot to see till it settles down. Man, the FTSE, you guys have a boring boring index to trade. So this thing is just slow moving like a snail. The FTSE, you have your higher low structures. Obviously, we've been over this many times. You have your mini cough range forming in here. We talked about the 618 giving you some good trades. You've had the opportunity now to trade this a couple times on shorts and capture these moves, 75.39. Down to, let's say, 74.60. But really, this is just a boring range. You have your death cross, and you're just waiting, guys. You had your death cross here, and now you're back in a bullish cross, I should say. Right? Is that the 50 that's green? The 50 is orange. Yeah, so you got your bullish cross back here. So, this is just moving sideways. UK had a 0% GDP. This remains your key resistance, guys, until something flips. And right now, I mean, you've tested this multiple times here, and here, and it keeps failing. So again, if I was going to trade this and I wanted to trade the FTSE, which at this point you'd have to put a weapon to my head to make me do it, but 75.39 is a key area to watch. And then just beneath it, 74.80, which is not a big move. It's a key support area because that's where it keeps bottoming at. So you're stuck in this zone. You're stuck in this zone until something breaks or it follows the other equity markets. Yeah, you're just trending along the median line in the MFI, going slightly bullish, slightly bearish. So just like you see on the chart, nothing exciting to see. Let's look at the French 40. I mean, look at this. This tracked perfectly with a perfect hit here at the 74.57 at the high, 1618 at 74.51. I did not move this fib, guys. This is a W pattern we've been talking about on the French 40. So you have this great W pattern. You broke out. You got up to 74.51. Watch this area if you trade the French 40. If you start making bearish patterns here, this is an area you can trade. 74.51 was your target. We're on the daily. Let me see what the indicators are on the daily. You're not overbought. You're just chopping. So you do have divergence here of price going up, right? You have divergence with price going up, but all indices are doing these divergences, but you got so much FOMO around the world. Everybody wants to talk about rate cuts and how bullish it is, even though it's extremely bearish, historically speaking. But 74.51, you're at 74.40 right now at the time of this recording. Let's just look at this on the 4-hour. Do you French 40 traders a solid here? Keep our fib targets on here. See if we're making any patterns. And again, the same three-wave pattern you see on the Dow, right? You're in the same on the DAX. You have your impulsive move up. You have your range being established here, all these little mini cough structures. So there's your buying climax, and here's your reaction. So you have this range being established. You have key resistance at 74.51. If you are so inclined to make wagers on this asset, that is a key resistance area, 74.51. Forming a potential double top here. Doesn't mean you're breaking down out of this range, but forming a potential double top here. Maybe you get a down thrust out of it, have to come back up. Who knows how long this will chop, but I think you're going to start seeing a lot of movement, if not tomorrow, then with Powell next week, because he's going to set the tone. He's either going to be dovish or he's going to be hawkish, and it's going to move the markets. So 74.40 on the CAC. Watch your key resistance, 74.51. Definitely some trading opportunities there in that range, guys. Let's look at the NIC, JPN. We talked about this. I hope the guy that was asking about the NIC, and I saw your comment with the thank you, so thank you very much. That was really nice of you. Talked about trading the NIC here, guys, and why this was such a key retracement area. Not only was it our fractal high, but it's also the 1618 of our W pattern, our Ponzi pattern in the market. Nice 1618 hit, 33,777, and you came all the way down, guys. Remember, we were up here when we talked about this pattern. You came all the way down to 32,190. So like a 1,600 point move now here on the Japanese NIC, okay? The NIC 225. This is an interesting one to trade. And again, just keep in context, my friend. Remember the larger structure as well. You're in that topping structure, trying to make a pivot or a double top of a multi-year Wyckoff trading range. This is either going to be ultimately a pivot to the upside, taking out that fractal, moving back up, or this is going to be a massive double top structure that ends up breaking down, might be breaking down at different levels, but ends up breaking down, bringing you back into this range. It took 30 plus years for the NIC to make a new all-time high. It just did it this cycle to make a new all-time high from the 1989 bubble. The first multi-pronged bubble in land and in equities took 30 plus years to recover from in the stock market. And right now you got a bearish structure forming on top of this range. So definitely a fun one to look at. Look at your key support level, 32,413. You're just below it. Beneath that, 31,941. And you want to see, what I would like to see here on the NIC is if this wants to come back up, right? So always look at things in a zoomed out perspective and a zoomed in perspective. So you could say this is a larger double top structure, right? Like this, larger double top. But within that, especially since you're looking at the daily, you could have this type of move, right? And get a nice retest. Get a nice retest, another potential area to enter if you believe this is going to continue in that bearish fashion, right? So future trades to keep in mind. Let's look at MSTR. Not doing anything with this until we know the direction of Bitcoin. Obviously, Bitcoin at our key resistance level of the 2618. MSTR, guys, hit our range. It got to 578. That was the 1618 expansion that we were looking at from our trading range. So this is the range I liked it. It's 566. It's been as high as 589. Want to see what Bitcoin's doing here. Want to see what the equity markets are doing here. Those key events are coming up in front of us tomorrow and Wednesday. So I guess patience is probably the best thing to advise at this juncture. Target was hit, beautiful expansion. Let's look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA is doing the same thing, guys, chopping. Had our great W pattern, didn't get to our 1618 target, started to retrace, and it retraced right to the 50% at 450. And now it's trying to bounce back up. But again, very dull, very boring since last video. It's at 463, right? So it's just stuck in this range. We're going to see what happens with these catalysts that enter the marketplace. And you'll see NVIDIA react accordingly. Tesla, same thing, guys. Very boring chart. Not a lot to see here. You have your cluster. We filled our gap like we wanted to see. We've been talking about that for a while. We hit our target at 252, and that was a 786 retracement from up here that we were watching, and you're at 240. So you just basically been stuck between 230, 252, this $20 range, consolidation range. Not a lot going on. MFI doing the same thing. It's slightly bullish, slightly bearish on the daily time frame. You're just chopping, consolidating. You're either going to be making a top for a drop, or you're going to be making a basing pattern to potentially break out from. And race, guys, look at this. This is the exact pattern that I showed you last time, what I was expecting race to do, and that's what it's doing. It did this 3-wave move, right? You got to understand these 3-wave and 5-wave moves in the markets, but you made your move up, move down, and this was your move up. And where did it retrace to? I'm going to guess the 618 or the 786. Haven't looked at this since our last video. 786, 366 is where it retraced to, right? Look at that on the nose right there. 366, 366.30. 786 fib is 366.32, within 2 cents on a $366 asset. And now it's slightly turning down. Now, obviously, if the NASDAQ gets more bullish, you can see the assets in the NASDAQ also get more bullish. But as of right now, this is what you wanted to see. This was forming a double top, right? This is a 3-wave pattern. And if the NASDAQ starts breaking down some with one of those key events playing out in a bad way coming up tomorrow or Wednesday, then look for this, because this area, 366 up to its high of 369, good area for wagers if the market turns down. And if we look at Adobe, same thing. We have our nice 3-wave pattern up, right? So Adobe didn't get very high here. So we're going to have to look at this and see what fib this hit. And this is all based off of our W, right? It's all based off our Ponzi pattern. The 1618 got above it. So let's pull a fib here. Where did we get to? Fractal high, down to your low. You got just above the 382, almost to the 486. And Adobe struggling at 607. Very overinflated asset. Over a 50 PE, just like Ferrari. So you're struggling. Now you're in this trap range, down between 592 and 616. So we'll see what happens with our events in the market. And we are bearish on the 4-hour MFI. Let's look at this on the daily, get a better reading. You're almost flat, basically almost at the median line, but you can see that 3-wave pattern. Be nice to see this come back up. I'd like to see it do this. Give you a nice trade there at 616 if the markets decide to turn down. And if it wants to turn up higher, then you got to take out that fractal high. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward with Mara. I haven't touched this chart since last time I showed it to you guys, which is why I want to share it again. Looking at this is how we laid out the fibs, I guess, whatever, a week or so ago when we went over Mara and Riot. And look at this. Look how beautiful it tracked. The 1272 at 1576. It's exactly where you got stuck, right? So our large trading range we've been in here, as high as 1888, down to $5.20. Obviously, way off the cycle highs. But this is moving in confluence, obviously, with some euphoria in the crypto space. But it's at a key area here at the square root of 1618, 1576. And so you want to look at this on the daily time frame. Again, it's really early on the daily. You got some supply wicks here. If it was to break out above this, 1810 is the 1618, guys. But if we look at this on the 4-hour, get some more candles, we're probably making a double top pattern, right? I mean, that's just an easy pattern to spot right away because you have that euphoric rise up and then a retracement. So you want to watch this because you have this pattern up, this pattern down, and now you want to see what it does. Does it start chopping, give you a W, break your fractal, try to come up, hit the 1618, and possibly give you a nice trade? Or are we going to struggle here and start breaking down here? And again, you can just throw this in like a nice little mini cough structure. If you're buying Climax and you're selling Climax currently, to see how this plays out here. So Mara won the watch, getting closer to our target at key resistance at 1576. and confluence with the other markets, especially Bitcoin. And look what Riot did. Riot actually hit our 1618. It got above it. So I haven't touched this. And if you look at this, again, we have our structure here that we were just highlighting, this fractal high I told you is going to struggle to get above, right? So gets above that fractal high, gets above the 1618 at 1499, got all the way to 1602. So got above it, and now it's back below it. So this is an interesting one to watch, okay, because you have this nice move up. And again, this is way off, I believe, as well, right? Way off its cycle high. Yeah, it took a while for the chart to load there, but yeah, way off its cycle high. But this is a difficult area for it just based on the market structure here. So I would watch this. And let's look at this on the 4-hour really quickly as well. 4-hour, again, it's just chop right now, right? But as this develops, you want to start seeing some patterns, maybe a double top structure, give you something in here, a W pattern that's break the fractal as this develops more. See what happens, and obviously see what happens in confluence of Bitcoin. Bitcoin moves to 48, right? If it was to get bullish, move to 48, watch Riot because you're probably going to exceed this level. But if it doesn't, then this is starting to form a trading range here where we're going to get a pattern at some point. 5-wave pattern like a head and shoulders, 3-wave pattern like a double top, and give us some opportunities to potentially trade. Let's look at oil. So oil, I had Bloomberg on this morning, and all they could talk about was oil's not a demand problem, it's a supply problem. It's funny how the narrative switches, right? 2 geopolitical wars going on. And oil is no longer a supply problem, but now not a demand problem. It's a supply problem as an oversupply, right? Which doesn't make any sense. Let me tell you what's happening with commodities, including copper, okay, industrial metals, and then looking at energy. It's selling off because of a weak global economy. Germany, negative GDP, going into recession. China heading into recession. UK 0% GDP. Going into recession is next. US GDP declining by 75%, according to the Fed, on this next Q4 print, then going into recession. Oil sells off in that environment. Okay, this is a global issue. Doesn't mean you can't trade it. As a matter of fact, Mark in our room likes the long and short energy, so he's been posting trades. But I just want you guys to be aware of that because your cycle high, I mean, was way up here. It's your cycle high at 131. And now you're getting back to this dangerous range, okay? Getting back to this dangerous range. And what was over here, guys? The pandemic, right? The pandemic when oil went down to $10, right? So that's where you got to on the pandemic, $10 oil. And now you're starting to get down to these fractal lows here. Let's just highlight one of these. Start getting down to these fractal lows. If oil gets below 62 and you're at 69, you're starting to run into trouble if it gets below 62, okay? So you want to watch this because this is going to be a siren call for what's coming in the marketplace with oil. Now let's look at this a couple of ways. Let's get a fib retracement. See if we're hitting a fib here. We got just below the 786. We're back testing the 786 right now to see if this can hold as resistance, if you can flip it as support. But guys, this is a bad omen for the economy to have oil this week. You want to see this go up. And looking at this on a 3-day chart, you get bigger patterns here. We had a nice double top breakdown here on oil, as you can see right here. So nice little 3-wave pattern. You see that? Nice 3-wave pattern, nice drop. Let's see what targets we got off of this 3-wave pattern on oil. The 2618 at 66, you exceeded the 1618. You try to hold it at 75, and then obviously you went below it. So let's go down to a daily time frame and see if we see any type of reversal pattern or anything forming here to show something bullish, right? Give us something. And I don't really see anything, not on a daily anyways. But if we look at this, find me a strong demand candle here. So if we do something like this, flag that. This was your trading range going back to March of 23, okay? And so you had your steps here in your trading range, your mini cough structure. You got resistance up here, but you put in a higher low, you broke through, and this should have been your pivot, right? This was your pivot, your opportunity to break to the upside or break down with what? A 3-wave pattern, a 3-wave double top, right? And now you're breaking down, and you could say this was a distribution structure here as well. So again, this doesn't look bullish to me. And if you go down small enough, you can definitely find trades. I'm sure you can start finding, go to 4-hour, 1 hour, you're going to find some trades you can take. But just on the macro view, guys, I don't like energy here. I don't like it. But there's definitely trades there if you want to hunt for them. But I know what's happening with the economy. I know what's happening with the recession. So oil's at 69. I think you're in a lot of danger if you get below 64 and $62. And you're not that far away from it because that is a lot of room to give up. So just watch this. If the oil start on the 8-hour time frame, something that'll get me more bullish is if we come down, we start coming down, we bottom, right? Maybe we get a down thrust, come up, pull up, do this. This is a reversal pattern, your W pattern. Trade it when it breaks that fractal or potentially trade it down here on this higher low. That's what I want to trade. Right now, this is just on a larger time frame, even the 8-hour here. This is just three-wave pattern drop. A distribution pattern drop. So you're just ascending down at this point or descending down at this point. And you can come down to 64, you're at 69 and put you back in this range. Or you can start building some type of reversal here on a lower time frame maybe to get some more price movement. But nothing I like there, guys. Sorry about that one. Looking at Nat Gas. Nat Gas, same thing. I mean, again, cycle high way up here, guys. Cycle high was way at, what was that? $10.38. Again, we trade energy a lot on our Discord. So I don't cover it a lot here, but we traded a lot on our Discord. And I didn't know there was that much interest in it, to be honest. So all of you guys started commenting on it. But looking at this, again, we have nice rebound candle here, reaction candle, and we're on the 3-day chart. And I mean, one good thing is you had a couple of consecutive higher lows here, but now you kind of took those lows out. Let's look at this on a daily. See if there's anything forming here because you formed the double top. You had the opportunity to break out and you got a three-way pattern. You broke back down again. I mean, energy is just bad. It's a bad area right now, but there's definitely, these are moves. I mean, you can definitely trade these moves. Let's look at this on a daily, see if we see anything interesting. I just don't have anything here. This is just, I mean, again, double top. This is a 5-wave pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see that right here. So you get 5-wave patterns and 3-wave topping patterns. These happen all the time, but you can see that here in the chart. It gives you this structure here, right? And there's your 5-wave topping pattern. Price broke down. So this is something to watch too. You're at this key fractal support area, I guess you could say, which is what you're trying to hold, this little mini range here. You see that? You're trying to hold this mini range. I guess let's pull a fib. That would be good since I trade with fibs. Pull a fib and look at this. And you came down to the 618 at $2. Two spot 398. So basically $2.40. You kissed it. You're trying to hold it. Even on the daily, I don't have anything here. Might be something in 4-hour, 1 hour. Nothing small though, or nothing this large in this large of a time frame. We'll see what happens with energy. Guys, have a fantastic weekend. Look out for our special report on Monday and definitely leave me your comments and I'll be happy to answer them as always. Take care, everybody. Talk soon.